I'm Rick Stivers. I'd like to welcome you to Young Martin's Reels. Today is a little bit different. It's the first day of 2025, and I've decided to create a video from a story that falls within my family. My dad, over 20 years ago, took care of my nephew, Justin, and his school project was to write a fiction story for his English project. So he and my dad sat down and worked on it together. And I went to visit my dad, and he wanted me to see the story or hear the story, and he read it, and I just really enjoyed listening to it, because if you knew my dad, you knew my dad was a storyteller, and you can hear flavors of the stories that my dad told in Justin's story. It's really good. I know that this story is primarily Justin's, but he did spend a lot of time around my dad, and I'm sure that that's some of the influence that came out of this. So I did a little research. I had forgotten who actually wrote the story. I did a little research, checking with my sister Jill, and I couldn't remember who had written the story. I thought maybe it was my nephew Josh or Timmy. It wasn't either of them. We checked with Josh. I checked with my stepbrother Joe. Joe said no, it wasn't him, wasn't Josh. And he checked with Josh to find out for sure. Josh remembered the story, but again, nobody seemed to know who wrote it. So I checked with Jill, and she went out checking, and it turns out that Justin was the one who wrote the story. And I think the story needs to be revived and brought back to life so that the family can always remember Justin's story that he wrote with my dad years ago, 20 years ago. So I plan to read the story. Remember, Justin was 11 years old when he wrote this, and this is his story about being down at my dad's farm. Starts off, this is a true story by Justin Ross. Justin's Adventure. First, let me tell you about myself. I'm 11 years old. I live part of my time with my grandma and grandpa. I am 5'8" and have blonde hair and blue eyes. My mother works nights, and that's why I stay with my grandpa. He has a farm in Washington County, Kentucky, and owns about 72 acres. The farm has a nice pond with clear blue water and many fish. The farm used to have a 100-year-old house that Grandma and Grandpa worked on for about 3 years. One 4th of July, a scoundrel burned the house to the ground. One day we went down to the farm just to get away from home and to do a little bit of fishing in the pond. It was a beautiful day, about 72 degrees with bright sunshine. I fished from early morning until noon, but after a while I got tired of catching the same old fish. I have caught them so many times that I have most of them named. Lunker is an old catfish that weighs about 18 pounds. Old Fighter is an old bluegill, big bluegill. Then there's old One-Eye, and then there is old One-Eye, about a 7-pound bass. He is hard to catch, but if you land your bait on the right side of him, he strikes it. And last but not least is old Slab, the big crappie. He's a beautiful fish with black specks on his shiny white side. So I asked Grandpa if I could go down to the Chaplain River so I could catch something different. The Chaplain River runs by the old scout camp. He gave me a couple of bluegill I could use for bait and told me to be sure to be back no more than in an hour and a half. No sooner had I gotten down to the riverbank, that was a very slick and muddy river bank, and I got a big bite. The fish struck so hard, I thought he would yank the pole out of my hand. I set the hook as strong as I could. What a fish I had hooked. It went up the river and down the river and almost ran me out of line. Time must have flown because I heard Grandpa hollering, "It's time to go!" But I wasn't about to stop fighting this fish. Grandpa had given me a gaff to take with me. Do you know what a gaff is? It's like the Captain Hook's hand with a stick on one end and a rope on the other end. I got the fish up on the bank, but the bank was so slippery I couldn't get it out. So I slipped the gaff in the fish's lower lip and tied the rope to a tree. I knew Grandpa's old mule Nellie was in the barn, so I slipped up the hill really quick and brought her down. Nellie was a strong mule with nice black coat and a long back mane and tail. She was always very sure-footed, and I knew she would be good on that slippery bank. I tied the gaff rope to Nellie's neck and gave her a slap on the rump. Her feet got to slipping on the muddy bank, and when she slipped in, she fell down the bank, and a fish swallowed her whole. What was I going to do? I just lost Grandpa's mule. Since I'm a very honest young boy, I could not lie to him, so I went up and told him the story with a big tear in my eye. I told him how sorry I was. He just gave me a big hug and said, "That's all right, Justin. I was down there last year and that darned old fish got Jake, Nellie's pulling mate, the same darn way. You know, I had the darndest time having to tell Grandma about the mule because he was her favorite pet. Grandpa and I talked about how we would replace Grandma's pet mules. We could go down to Whitesburg, big swap meet, and try to trade some fishing tackle. But when we got there, there were no mules. Now what were we going to do? She would never believe that a fish so big that it could swallow a mule. But that's what happened. Could we make up some other kind of story? We have coyotes down on the farm that are always chasing our deer and turkeys, you know, hearing them howling at night. Maybe they ate the mules. Grandpa told me that none of this was good. If we told her the truth, she wouldn't believe us. If we made up a wild tale, that would be bad. We were in one heck of a pickle. I thought if Grandpa would tell her straight out what happened, she might not be mad. But maybe if we bought her a nice gift. But what in the heck could we replace a mule? We could buy her a diamond ring, which we couldn't afford. I thought we were going to just have to tell her the truth and both give her a big hug and a kiss. Knowing Grandma, she would think that was the best gift ever. Did you know that it worked? If you decide to go swimming in the Chaplain River, you better be careful. That's Justin's story for his 11-year-old English project. My dad absolutely loved that story. He read it to me, I know, at least twice. And when I got to thinking about it, I had to go search it out and tell the tale and put it out there. I'm hoping you guys will. My dad was a master storyteller. He could tell stories with the best of them. And there's flavors of him in Justin's story. Justin, I thank you for sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it. Jill, I appreciate your work. Jill and Joe, I appreciate your efforts in helping me find the story. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. For now, that's Rick Stivers with Young Martin's Reels, signing out.